prevalence of superheroes and villains throughout fiction, a common fantasy of children and adults alike is having superpowers.
But not every character featured in superhero stories has powers that you would actually want to have. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Adam. Today we will be taking a third look at the top 10 superpowers you wouldn't want to have. Let's jump right in. Coming in at number 10, a host for a symbiote. Now look, there are some pretty awesome symbiotes out there. They're almost all pretty powerful. They all look incredibly awesome and they all grant their hosts superhuman abilities, but more often than not, it seems like being the host to a symbiote is a curse more than a power. Unless you are the perfect pairing of moral and physical ideal, which almost no one is, bonding with a symbiote will be a give and take relationship, and it's usually just you giving and them taking. They will take your body and use it, even when you are sleeping, feeding off of your emotions and a chemical produced by your brain, making you more aggressive and mentally unstable, or even just turning you against others, so kiss your relationships goodbye. Assuming the symbiote doesn't completely devour you after it's done using you, then it can just leave you high and dry, betraying you at any moment. They are next to impossible to control, and you're the one who usually has to compromise to give it what it wants. The symbiote could also asexually reproduce a version of all your worst aspects into another version of itself. It can become obsessed with you like a crazy ex, and even if it doesn't, it's next to impossible to remove. On top of all of that, you will very likely have to devour another person at some point when you host a symbiote. Sure, there are positives to being a symbiote host, but next to all the negatives, not really worth it in my opinion.
Number 9. Ultimate Colossus. Colossus in the classic Marvel universe has a pretty desirable power set. He has super strength and stamina, and is able to transform his body into a practically indestructible metal. This makes him a force to be reckoned with, and there's not really any downside to it. However, Colossus has a slightly different power set in the Ultimate Marvel universe. On Earth 1610, he is still able to transform his skin into a super tough metal, but he does not have super strength, which means that when he transforms, he becomes so heavy that he can't even move. So his power is still useful for like defense, but it is practically useless when it comes to doing anything but standing in a stationary position like an indestructible statue. Because he still had to do stuff, we eventually found out that he had regularly been using the illicit mutant growth hormone called Banshee that enhanced his powers, allowing him to have the super strength that is so associated and necessary for the character, but at the cost of him being hopelessly addicted to the substance. He became so dependent on Banshee that he was expelled from the school and the team and went on to lose control, becoming aggressive in his need for a fix.
Number 8. Isca The Unbeaten. Isca is thousands of years old and is the sister of Genesis, who is the wife of Apocalypse. She is a hardened warrior who respects power and strength like the other mutants of Araco, and her powers reflect that. Isca's power is psychokinesis, which is the power over luck and probability, but specifically, her power means that she cannot lose, or the better way to say it is that she always wins. This includes one-on-one contests, votes, and wagers, but also larger battles where she's a member of a team or an army. In contests of skill, her power, including some limited shapeshifting, gives her the talent she needs to win. In contests of skill, her powers might give her the talent she needs to win, or she might just win through, quote, improbable circumstances. So far, it's sounding pretty good. Always winning is so good, it just sounds like ridiculous and lazy writing. But it also means that in larger battles or wars, her powers weigh the probability of the two sides and make her defect from the losing side and join the winning side, even if the losing side was composed of those she truly cares about. Meaning that even though she still technically won, she betrayed her closest friends and allies. Her power has also famously been used against her and one of her allies. When Tarn the Uncaring faced off against Magneto, the mutant Sunspot bet Isca that Tarn would win. So, because she would be betting against Tarn, who she had fought beside for thousands of years, was easily wiped off the face of Mars by Magneto, who crushed his head like a cherry. Her power is really good, it's just got some really crummy loopholes.
Number 7. Daredevil. When Matt Murdock was a child, he saved an old man who was about to be hit by a truck by heroically pushing him out of the way. This caused an accident where the radioactive isotope that the truck was carrying got in Matt's eyes, blinding him. Due to comic book science, the radiation also heightened Matt's other senses to a superhuman level. He was able to train these senses to develop his radar sense, which lets him be aware of his surroundings and do backflips. He can also hear people's heartbeats to tell if they are lying, and his sense of smell is so good that he can tell what someone had for lunch the day before. While this is an undeniably cool power set, there are some drawbacks. This causes a huge amount of sensory overload for Matt, which can be difficult to deal with. And he also lives in one of the stinkiest cities on the planet. Besides this, he's still blind. Matt's powers are more so him making the best of a bad situation than a cool thing that happened to him. Yes, doing sick flips would be cool, but the cost of never seeing your loved ones' faces again is a pretty high cost that most people wouldn't pay if they had the option.
Number 6. Friendly Fire. As the only legit superpowered member of the ragtag team of misfits known as Section 8, you'd think that Friendly Fire would be that team's premier heavy hitter. The man has some pretty strong energy projection abilities, being able to fire beams of energy out of his hands. That's a pretty good power. But wait, why is he called Friendly Fire? That's because our hero here can't seem to ever intentionally hit a target. This is just due to his incredibly bad aim and his incredibly horrendous battle nerves. He is more likely to hit one of his own teammates or even an innocent bystander than any of his actual enemies. And in his final moments, he went even a step further when he managed to hit himself, blasting his own head completely off of his shoulders. Why anyone would want this power, I do not know. The good news is, no one on Section 8 is particularly desirable, even if you could call them a hero.
Number 5. The Hulk. When Bruce Banner was accidentally caught in the blast radius of his experimental gamma bomb, he underwent a startling metamorphosis. Whenever he becomes angry or outraged, he transforms into the Hulk. The Hulk is of course a giant green, sometimes gray rage monster who is prone to going on rampages and smashing things. Hulk is viewed as a monster by society, and by extension, so is Banner. So he has to be in constant control of his emotions or he risks transforming into the creature. He typically has no memories of what happened while he was in Hulk form, so for Bruce, he usually is in a stressful situation, at which point he will go through an extremely painful looking transformation, black out, and then wake up miles away with no clothes other than a tattered pair of purple pants. Much like Adam at our company Christmas party. So while he is a great character to read, being the Hulk ruined Banner's life as he is constantly being hunted and attacked, and it's really not a fate anyone in their right mind would want to put themselves through.
Number 4. Rainbow Girl. The Legion of Superheroes is full of some odd and unexpected superpowered beings, but since a lot of weirdos can make it onto the team, a lot of weirdos try out who don't quite have what it takes. Rainbow Girl is one such person. Instead, she made it onto the Legion of Substitute Heroes. But okay, so why is Rainbow Girl not good enough for the team? Well, she has an incredibly useful ability to harness the emotional spectrum. Red for rage, orange for greed, yellow for fear, green for will, blue for hope, indigo for compassion, and violet for love. You might be thinking that, hey, that's actually really cool. The different lantern cores harness the different colors of the emotional spectrum, and they're all incredibly capable. And you know what? You're right. The problem is that Rainbow Girl doesn't really have any control over this ability, and she basically has incredibly abrupt and drastic mood changes. She can also make rainbows and emit pheromones that make people like her, but the massive mood swings are not something you should want to have. The character, or more specifically the creators, landed in a little bit of hot water as she encapsulates the old-fashioned trope of women being emotional, and that's not good. We don't like that.
Number 3. Blight. First introduced in the Batman Beyond animated series, Derek Powers was an evil businessman who had gained control of Wayne Enterprises in the near future, featured in the show. He developed a mutagenic nerve gas which he intended to sell as a weapon, but the conspiracy was discovered by one of his employees. He had that employee taken out, and their son, Terry McGinnis, swore revenge on Powers, becoming the new Batman. While fighting Batman, Powers was exposed to the gas, and in order to survive, he was forced to undergo extreme radiation treatment. It saved his life, but it also transformed him into a spooky glowing green skeleton who calls himself Blight. He's able to blend in with society if he wears a layer of false skin, but it deteriorates quite quickly. He can manipulate his radiation in order to shoot power blasts, and the extreme heat he gives off makes him immune to most melee attacks, and he can cause radioactive explosions around him. It's not all good though, as he is horrifyingly disfigured weird and can't be around people without either his false skin or a containment suit without causing everyone around him to die from radiation poisoning. This was unpleasant for the evil businessman, but for a typical person who has friends and people they care about, the inability to ever touch another person without them dying horribly would be pretty crap.
Number 2. Ten-Eyed Man. Philip Reardon is the Ten-Eyed Man, a threat to the Caped Crusader, a villain that requires intelligence to beat, some could say. The answer to the question of what happens if you take away a man's ability to see, and a combination of both a war injury and also an explosion at a warehouse that burned his retinas, but instead you reconnected his optic nerves to his hands, giving him the ability to see out of each of his fingertips. I don't know if anyone's actually ever wondered what that would be like, but now you know, and that is his only power. As you can imagine, this does pose some problems. For starters, his regular eyes are blind. So you put a pair of gloves on this guy, and he's done. Also, his weird eye finger things are extremely sensitive, so he is often easily defeated simply by injuring them, which can be done by tricking him into catching or touching something, or even theoretically by giving him a nice crisp high five. But let's not forget, it has been shown he can only be kept in a jail cell by keeping his hands locked in a special non-see-through box because, with eyes on his fingers, quote, escape would be child's play for him. So while I can see some advantages to this, sort of, I can also see a ton of downsides. And I can actually see them because I have eyes.
Number 1. Mr. Freeze. When Victor Freeze's wife Nora developed a generic fictional disease, McGregor syndrome stage 4 if you want to go off the Batman and Robin version, which I always do, he put her in cryostasis while he worked to find a cure. This led to a lab accident which involved Victor being exposed to the cryochemicals, and it transformed him into Mr. Freeze. There are some advantages to his condition. For example, his aging is dramatically slowed, and he is immune to cold-related illnesses and any other diseases, toxins, or poisons. But overall, it's a raw deal. He cannot be in an environment above a sub-zero temperature or he risks dying horribly. As a result, he is forced to wear his cryosuit whenever he leaves the house. As he put it in the classic Batman the Animated Series episode Heart of Ice, think of it, Batman, to never again walk upon a summer's day with a hot wind in your face and a warm hand to hold. Ah yes, I'd kill for that. In the animated series, his condition got even worse as time went on, with his body deteriorating until he was just a head in a jar, scuttling around with robot spider legs. No thanks.
Well, we don't do a point zero, so that seems to be all the time we've got left.
Be sure to let us know your thoughts down below, but in the meantime, I'm Andrew Boyd.
And I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and we will catch you on the flippity flop. Peace out, nerds.